Good afternoon from Prague. I am Martina Pecková-Černá, and I am greeting you from the Arts and Theatre Institute. It is our pleasure to welcome you to the Green Thursday series of international online discussions with Czech and foreign guests from the field of performing arts. We are here every fourth Thursday at the same time, 3 p.m. Central European Time, with diverse moderators and guests ranging from dance and theater artists to curators, culture managers, and theorists.
The overall topic, "The show must go on, offline," was chosen so that we can address the common theme of sustainability and the performing arts from many perspectives. These include the response of the performing arts to the state of the environment and the COVID pandemic, as well as the field's emerging strategies to address urgent social changes and paradigm shifts in culture and in our societies. These discussions are organised by the International Cooperation Department and in collaboration with the European projects Create to Connect, Create to Impact, and the Central European Performing Arts Network, PACE V4. They are also linked to the main theme of this year's Theatre Night in the Czech Republic, which is sustainability. They also correspond with the arts and theatre institutes, culture, and the climate activities which serve as a communication platform for public and independent cultural organisations in the Czech Republic on global environmental challenges.
Today's topic is Green Deal for Performing Arts, and I'm happy to welcome here our guests. So with us today is Michaela Rigrová, producer and sustainable theater expert from Czech Republic. Hello, Misha.
Hello, thank you for inviting me. It's my pleasure.
Then we have here Gwendolyn Sharp, founder of the nonprofit organization The Green Room, focusing on environmental strategies in the music industry and cultural sector based in France. Hello, Gwen.
Hello, Martina. Thank you.
Our third guest is Anna Galas-Kosil, theater expert and expert on international relations in the performing arts, currently curator of the interdisciplinary cultural organization Biennale Warszawa. Hello, Anna.
Hello, great to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation.
And we have also one courageous man among us, which is Peter Dlouhý, a live art curator, dramaturg, and culture organizer based in Prague. Hello, Peter.
Hello, everyone. I'm actually a bit scared.
So, as I said, today's topic is Green Deal for Performing Arts, and the point of departure for today's discussion is a survey which was carried out by the Arts and Theatre Institute in spring of this year, and which was called Theatre and Environmental Protection. In this survey, majority of the respondents stated that they actively try to minimize the environmental impact of their activities, albeit in a somewhat chaotic way. We will discuss current trends in the fields of theater or dance, including issues around mobility, production and promotion, as well as sustainability as a theme for artistic creation or communication with the audience. From concrete examples of good practice and strategic measures, we will then shift our focus to the organic changes and in attitudes that are now shaping points of departure and conditions for the creation and presentation of performing arts as a result of the COVID pandemic. And as we are still in a COVID crisis, we expect rather to find some observation of current situation than really findings based on bottom-up processes in performing arts organizations, national cultural policies, and European level in relation to Green Deal commitments of the European Council. And our main viewpoint will be, where are performing arts heading to right now? So that was for the introductory part, and now I hope it's over with my long talks, and we will give the floor to our guests. We will start with Michaela. And Misha, I would like to start with your research. In 2014, you published a book in Czech. I can show it here. It's called Sustainable Theater. Could you share with us what were the findings from this research, and maybe also what was the impulse to write it also in Czech context and for Czech readers?
Very well, thank you. The impulse came several years before I started to think about ecology and sustainability in arts in 2007. And it actually started at Prague Quadrennial, where I was working at the time as an assistant of the director. And the experience after the exhibition ended, which I saw how wasteful actually exhibition was. And I was shook. And you know, like I come from a background of production. I studied production at DAMU, at the Theatre Faculty of Academy of Performing Arts in Prague. And my production side was just shook how wasteful everything is. And imagining and like seeing how one part of art scene is lacking money and resources, and this part where things were usable things just only used, for example, for the PQ are thrown away. And it made me think. And at that time, I didn't come from the view of ecology and sustainability. I just came simply from the point of economic efficiency. And that's how I started to think about it. Then I started to learn more, and also my point of view started to change a little bit. And from solely economic point of view, I shifted more to the overall ecology and sustainability, that actually it is not divided from arts, because it is not divided from our life, and arts are in our life. Everything is connected. And that's how I get on this path. I made it kind of main focus of my studies in a master degree program at school, and I wanted to write thesis about it. And at first, I was really hitting kind of not understanding of this topic, but I persisted and I wrote the thesis, and from there, the book came out, because I felt it is important to make at least first step into getting this kind of idea into public, because not that this theme would be absolutely unknown in Czech Republic, but it was definitely not recognized. And for many years later, it was still not recognized. And honestly, it started to be popular now. Like in the past 3 years, we can see a huge shift in the cultural sector in the Czech Republic. But before, it was kind of ahead of a time, and hard at times not to look like complete freak that I'm connecting ecology and sustainability and theater and arts overall. So yeah, this was the path, and this was the reason for the book, which is first step. Now in retrospect, many things are different. The book is obsolete in a way. It is very, very basic, but at least it is some basic which is out here. but definitely the time is for something new to come. My findings in the book, or the ideas I try to share with readers and people interested in this topic, is that ecology and sustainability in arts and in theater is not really about just changing some procedures, but it is about changing and shifting how we think about everything what we do, and how we do the art, how we create our performances. And it is a not easy task, and this is basic, but this basic many times kind of like hurts, because thinking sometimes hurt. It's uncomfortable. You have to open to new ideas. You have to kind of rethink everything what you were taught, and it's not easy. And especially when you are still living in the kind of old paradigm, in the old system, incorporating new way of thinking is not easy. And sometimes it is overwhelming and discouraging for people. So that was one of the first main findings. Then I looked, because I'm a production manager, so I looked more on this production side of how we create the theater and how we work in a theater. Because of course there is another level, and that is dramaturgy, and what the art and theater is about, what it brings to people, what it can show. But that was not my expertise really, so I just mentioned it and put it a little bit aside for somebody else, somebody more profound in this. And I looked at the production itself, about the processes, about the materials usage, the buildings, and of course the economics of all of it, because one of the first kind of contra-argument in every talk about ecology and sustainability in arts and theater is that it will be expensive. And that is the idea people have, that is the point of view people have really deeply embodied in their minds. And not all the time that is true. Because many theaters, many examples of more ecological or sustainable behavior in theaters, in the institutions, are coming from the place of needing to be more financially efficient and more sustainable. And there again, we come back to the first point, that it's a way of thinking, because when we look at things and changes, the institutions, the buildings or the groups or even individuals need to make, when we look at like one-time activity, it might be financially very expensive for them. But when we look at it as in a long run, it completely shifts the outcome. And there is the important thing to show that there is the difference, making something as a one-time thing, or thinking in the long run and actually incorporating it in the function of the institution, the performance group, or the individual artistic creations. And
you mentioned that well, it's needed to really change the way of thinking. I mentioned here the survey we did in the Arts and Theatre Institute on positions of Czech theaters towards sustainable behaviors. You saw the result that 51% of all the respondents answered that they feel that something should be done, but they behave rather in a very non-systemic way. There is not this huge shift in reorganizing all the theater or all the company or whatever. Was it surprising for you? Because this survey was done recently in spring of this year. Do you feel some difference maybe between the response to your book in 2014 and today's position of Czech theaters towards sustainability?
Yeah, thank you for bringing it up. I see a difference. As was mentioned, the survey was sent to 140 subjects and 37 surveys were received, which is less than 50%. It's a low number, but it is way more respondents than it would be in 2014. So the change is here, and then the outcomes as they are stated in a survey were not really surprising for me, because if we put it in a context, the respondents are already the ones who think about these topics. They are already kind of, and sorry for the word, but I have no better, they are already kind of woke in talking about ecology and sustainability. And the thing that they don't have the tools or knowledge how to actually do it practically is another thing, but all of these are already thinking about it. We don't have to preach to them because they already know something should be done and they are trying. From the responses, I can see that yes, it is not systemic, and it is in a way for many unsustainable because they are still working in the old system we have in theater. All the institutions or groups, the theaters, I will call it the theaters for now, are working in the old system. It's the system which is here for decades. And suddenly like bringing new initiatives like this is not easy because you cannot really put the new initiatives and new processes on the old system. The system would need to change. And that is something the theaters don't really do yet. But they will get there. They will have to get there if they actually want to be efficient in what they are doing. And with more and more people interested in this and willing to really put the time and energy into these activities, it will slowly change. It will be painful. It is painful for many. I believe that, and I applaud everyone who is trying to change even little things like working better with waste and recycling, even though these are kind of many times marginal things in the whole coloss of theater. I applaud them for doing that and trying. I applaud them that they are standing and trying to speak with colleagues who are not really into this because they don't understand why theater should do that. And this is, I think, the most important thing, and my finding is people need to understand why. And that's not really done properly and explained within the organizations why we actually should do this. I remember when I was doing my research back then, I found out as a big surprise that National Theatre in Prague is actually pioneering the way of ecology and sustainability, which for me—
We should mention that actually National Theatre in Prague is on the cover on your book too.
Yes, it is true. And, you know, I was really in shock because for me, National Theatre at that time was like this old dinosaurs waiting for to die, kind of. Like I was just kind of a student, didn't think much of it. And then I found out that like they're doing these amazing things, working with experts, changing technologies, renovating the building in a way that it will bring it will bring them better usage of energies, water, that they will be less wasteful, and that they are thinking about mobility of props and scenography and everything, and they were thinking about it in a very out there, like they were very outgoing in like how they do that. But I couldn't find anything on the theater website. I couldn't really find any information, and I only had this info from the one guy who was pushing all of this, because he was engineer, and he just likes when things work properly. So when the technologies in theater were not working properly, he wanted to change it, and he did, and it's amazing. But the theater itself was silent. Then I accidentally find out that they won something like ecological Oscar, European ecological Oscar, and there was no mention anywhere. And it was like really, it was really like bothering me. And I called to theater, I called to the public relation department, and I asked, how is it possible that theater, who is doing such an amazing job in this field, is not really talking about that? Because you couldn't find any mention even in their yearly reports, unless you knew what you were looking for, and then you realize that this one sentence is actually a summary of all the amazing things they are doing. So I called there, and there was a silence on the phone for a bit, and then the person answered, "But we are here to make a theater." And that was all. That was all. Just like, we are here to make a theater. We will not talk about these things.
So this happened maybe before 2014. When was it?
It was in 2000, between 2010 and 12. I don't remember the year exactly.
So maybe 10 years ago?
It was like 10 years ago. And things changed. And now, now there are more people interested in this topic who are really taking it on and pushing it in the theater, in the management. And management, which is important for theaters, is in favor of such activities.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to comment, that probably this also usage of sustainable behaviors in communication and PR relations, public relations, has changed meanwhile, because also the topic of sustainability has become much more present in mainstream media, in mainstream debates and talks. But right now we have another topic here, and it is COVID-19 pandemic. What do you think? What has COVID-19 changed in respect to sustainability in performing arts? Is it connected, or is it something that absolutely pushes sustainability aside?
How I see it is that COVID-19 changed really nothing, like nothing. Nothing what is happening changed because COVID-19. It just really shined the light on how the system is unsustainable, and that things need to be done differently. Of course, yes, it is much harder because of the quarantines and like the everyday functioning of the institutions is way harder right now, with people getting into quarantines, not being able to perform. But overall, there is not really a huge change, because I think, you know, like the saying that like when you throw a frog into boiling water, it will jump out. But if you put it in a cold water and boil it, it will just stay there and boil in the water, right? So COVID-19 just showed us that we are the frog in the water, which is heating up, and we didn't realize it. And now this was like really kind of a huge ray of light on how we do things, how our processes are, how unsustainable our theaters are, because they are understaffed and people are overworked and we are not sharing things in a way we should. We don't have capacity to do things. One of the main problems why ecology and sustainability in theaters is actually so marginal and put aside is because people don't have the capacity to really work on it. They are in full capacity working on what is their job in the institution. So bringing up another almost full-time job or part-time job, like working on the strategies on how actually we can change things, is impossible. So it is really done through tremendous sacrifices they do, putting their free time and energy into it. And this is also like one important thing, like when you want to change something systemically, you have to be systemic in this. You have to allow people work on it. You have to give them the space and time and give them energy to work on that. It will not do itself. People will do it. People will change it because people know the institution and they can see the findings, do the researches, make the tweaks how we can work in theaters. But if there is no capacity for that because they are at full with their everyday job, nothing will change.
You said at the very beginning of our talk that of course we should be aware also of the fact that culture is really a drop in the sea in all the pollution system compared to agriculture, to industry, to energy production. It's really a small polluter, but still, is there something art can do even though it's so weak in this respect?
You know, at first when I started to explore this whole beautiful area of ecology and sustainability in arts, I genuinely thought that like art will change the world and it will save the world. It will open the minds of people, and that like art is responsible and morally responsible to actually do that. And within the 10, 13 years I'm researching this, my thinking changed, because art will not actually save the world in this matter, because it is small polluter. It's like a spit in a sea. What theater produces, it's really low. It's the whole system, how humanity lives. And what I think now is that like theater and art actually still needs to continue on this path, because it will be the path of its survival. Art and culture and theater is now kind of endangered species, and sustainability and ecology can help it to survive in the coming years, in the coming era. Who knows what will happen? COVID-19 is showing us how easily everything can collapse. We are 5 months in, and many subjects don't know if they will survive. So it only resonates with the thing that we are endangered species as a theater and art. And what people can see now on the screens is a quote from David Finnegan, who is author of the Climate Deniers, a really interesting theater play, which, by the way, Švandovo Divadlo in Prague is now rehearsing, and the premiere should be this autumn. So I'm very excited about that.
Hopefully there won't be lockdown again. We know about the numbers in Prague.
Well, you know, if it's not in autumn, it will come later. It's
yes.
Okay, we will get there. And David just wrote this very interesting thoughts about how art is actually really not changing, not saving the world. And he talks about it from the perspective, as he's Australian, from the perspective of the fires they had at the beginning of year. hope we all remember, even though it seems now many years ago, even though it was just like 9 months ago when the whole Australia was like burning. And he's talking about the facts that like even this disaster of unprecedented scale didn't change anything and didn't shift people's minds. And he is also quoting Chris Thorpe, who told him, "We still think we're making art to save the world. We've never been making art to save the world. We've always been making art to slow down and fragment and isolate the thinking we use to understand the world." And I think this is very important. The art is here for that. And when put it in context, David then says that like really art can put our situation in historical context and give us a longer, richer perspective on our actions rather than feeling trapped in an eternal present. And art can train our empathy, help us see the world through other people's eyes, and illustrate the way that this crisis exaggerates existing inequalities rather than impacting us all equally. And the last thing, which is for him the most important of all, art can gather us together and let us know that we are not alone in feeling overwhelmed and inadequate to deal with the crisis, which I think is really beautiful.
Thank you, Misha. We will maybe come back to some of your findings and thoughts later on in the discussion. Now we would like to ask Gwen to tell us her position on what was said here, mainly in relation to the survey which was mentioned. Is this also the situation on international scope, that the position of theaters and performing arts organization is rather random, based on or compared to a systematic approach to sustainable behavior? Or what's your feeling? What's your experience from your context?
Yes, thank you, Martina. And thank you, Michaela. Also, there's a lot to think about already. I share a lot of the things that were said, actually, and I think that when actions are being implemented, if I think about the French context, for example, I would say that the main motivation is often a personal one. So this means like it's very rare for me when I do workshops or if I start working with an organization that the first person I will talk to will be a manager or a director. It's very often someone that works from the either production side or sometimes communication side, and it will be someone who got really sick of just picking up the plastic bottles or saw so much waste in backstage, or just has a dilemma with the way she works at home and the way the way she's at home and the way she sees things going in her work. So that's, I would say, the main things that I see. My experience comes mainly from the music field. I can say that in France, the music festivals have been really pioneers on those questions. So they've been working on this for at least 10 years. So now we can see a more systemic approach for those festivals. They collaborate a lot, they share a lot of things. As Michaela said, it's also super important to communicate on what you do to inspire the others. So that's something that is done quite a lot in the field of festivals. But altogether, the risk also is like if this person who's kind of carrying those tasks leaves the organization, then there's really an issue of how the knowledge is kept into the organization. So this really takes like the transmission part, like documenting all the actions, and often people don't have enough time to do that. So that's where it's really important to have people that are there to support. Of course, there's a big need for financial support for the sector. I think now people in performing arts sector are ready to switch, but they really lack both the financial support and support from organizations. In France, we don't have an organization that is dedicated to environmental sustainability for the arts, as it can exist. Like you have green music in Australia, you have the Go Group in Germany, Broadway Green Alliance in New York City, and of course in the UK you have Julie's Bicycle and Creative Carbon Scotland, which are really supporting the sector for this. I would say that big events and organizations would have a more systemic approach, because they often look into labels and certifications, like international norms, like the ISO 2121. Sorry, I have it in French in my head. Which is an international norm for sustainable development, sustainable management, sorry. Or you have like the Greener Festival Awards for music festivals, which also gives a very systemic and broad framework for this.
So you see some difference maybe between like bigger public institutions and independent organizations in tackling this agenda?
Yes, definitely. We have more initiatives coming from the independent sector, that's for sure. They have been active in those fields for a very long time, and even are quite activist, I would say. For the bigger institutions, they lack incentives to take actions, because we don't have any, like, when we started to talk about this, I was mentioning the case we had with security measures after the Paris attack. So big institutions have obligations to put in place those measures, but there are absolutely no obligations for environmental issues. The only one we have now is to the single-use plastic cutlery that is forbidden now, but that's the only real law that we'll have regarding those issues. And yeah, and of course the independent sector is also more flexible, and it's easier for them to, and they don't own their buildings, or when for big institutions, like often the biggest, apart from the audience travels, the biggest energy or the biggest impact will come from the building, and that's very difficult to deal with. Often it belongs to the state or to the city. You don't have visibility on your energy consumption, and renovation is difficult. If it's a heritage building, then it's more layers. So yeah, they face way more issues probably than, or different ones, I would say.
You described this bottom-up process in some awareness in terms of sustainability in the professional activities of performing arts organizations. And your organization is an experienced body in helping culture organizations to develop their sustainable strategies. So if we want to be more practical, what should an organization in performing arts expect if some of its members decides or wishes to develop a sustainable strategy for the whole organization?
Yes, I will just maybe share my screen with you so you can just see an example. Okay. So this is the approach that we use, which is not the only one, but we often use this Deming wheel model, which is for continuous improvement. This is a management method, which I find really useful to monitor the actions and everything that you do related to environmental sustainability. So this, in other words, I would say that it helps you to measure and to monitor either internally or with the help of an organization all the actions that you will implement. It's a model that we use just generally, but I think it helps keeping like this right direction. And this part where you see where it's written standard, that's what keeps the wheel not falling down. And that's where we put this, what we call the sustainable management, that keeps the wheel going down and makes sure that, for example, the knowledge inside the organization is not lost. It helps you to understand your impact and to implement an action plan, evaluate your actions, and then you can share your learnings. As Michaela was saying, that's it's important to think this as the last step also, because in the contrary, if you start to communicate on things that you didn't do, this is what we call just greenwashing, basically. So this approach is not always maybe the easiest one to start with like this, because usually you will see that for some smaller organizations, they implement a lot of small actions that they kind of get lost in the multiplicity. And then you see, like, if you look at the communication of some organizations or festivals, it looks a bit like a catalog of actions, like we did that, we did that, we did that on different subjects, so whether it's related to food or mobility, but then you don't see a global approach. So this is really to help the organizations to go into a more focused objective, I would say. And again, I'm going to repeat what Michaela said, but a common thing is also to think that environmental measures are going to cost a lot of money. And this helps also, like, after you do kind of an audit of your needs, you just focus on some actions. You don't want to tackle everything at once, because that's where you're going to just spend too much time and it's not going to go anywhere concrete. So you just focus on some small things. To take an example, a music festival that I worked with decided to give water for free, so tap water for free to all the persons, to all the audience. And at the beginning, it was something really tricky for them, because of course the festival earns a lot of money from the bar. And the idea was, if we don't sell soft drinks or even water in bottles, we're going to lose money. So we made this experiment. And at the end, we discovered that if people get water for free, they will spend more money in buying beers, or because they just know that it's maybe a way to support the festival. And they are not just thirsty because the basic needs are met. So it was a good finding, and that's something that I like to use as an example. Yeah, just start with a small action and the rest will follow naturally, because it's, I find it very creative to try to find solutions, and it can be very addictive. Once you are in it, you can't stop looking into solutions.
One of the measures in more sustainable behavior can be also some measures introduced on the level of mobility. Of course, right now, mobility is not such a burning topic as it's rather stopped. But anyway, would you share with us some last trends and tendencies in mitigating impacts of mobility in cultural sector?
Sure. Yes, I will just come back maybe to some basics also, because I don't know how people that are following us are familiar with the subject. But like from the perspective of the theater or a music venue or a festival, transport and travel can be one of the largest contributors in terms of an event's greenhouse emission. And audience travel can represent up to 80% of the global carbon footprint of the event. And there is a shared responsibility between the event organizers, but also with the audience, with the partners, the promoters, and in some extent with the artist as well. And from the perspective of an artist or a company or a band, that's the approach that I have through my work. Mobility is often only seen in the spectrum of travel. As you mentioned, also, Martin, there was a lot of press coverage. I think it was last year with Coldplay, Massive Attack, or even the dancer and choreographer Jérôme Bell, who were really putting the focus on plane travel. But if you look at more precisely at what it means to tour and to go to a residency, there's way much to it. So you have, I've listed there, so I'll just go quickly through it, and if you have any questions after, we can come back. But you have, so of course, personal travel emissions, freight travel emissions. The image I've shared here is actually a concert of Rammstein, who's traveling with 40 trucks, the yellow trucks that you can see there. So they just go on the road with this, and that's, you know, compared maybe to a flight with five artists traveling, this has way more impact. So sometimes it just depends on the projects and what we are talking about. Accommodation also can be a very have a significant impact. If you look at orchestras, for example, catering, merchandising, waste connected to a nomadic way of life, everything that has to do with production, so energy and materials, and communication. But and of course, there are many challenges connected to those issues, whether it's, some of them we went through them already, but time and isolation, like for some, for example, technicians that want to implement environmental measures before the tour, it can be very difficult to be connected to other people and to get access to resources, training, tools. You have, of course, all the travel constraints, either connected to your local context. It's very different for you if you are in Europe or if you are in Asia or somewhere in Africa. Then if you don't have the infrastructure to travel by train, then it's very difficult to tell to an artist you have to avoid flying when your context is really, and of course, visa taxations, the multiplicity of stakeholders. Sometimes it's difficult for a venue to have direct contact with the artist or the right person to talk to for this. Yeah, competition between venues and festivals with exclusivity clauses that we see more and more. The prestige, if I take the example of the French Institute, they will support a theater or dance company or a band that will rather travel to 5 or 6 capitals in different parts of the world than if you present something and say, I'm going to travel just in one country, but do more smaller venues because it's less prestigious. And also in maybe in a lesser matter, intellectual property. But to finish with a positive note, this comes also with some great opportunities, like awareness raising with your audience or with your partners, artist engagement, the reputation also of the like the museum, as you said, Michaela, that's also it can be more attractive for some people that will look into something more eco-responsible. It can open to different partnerships. Also, some actions are connected to more global societal change. We see this more and more now with gender equality, climate justice, and of course advocacy. Here I've shared an example also of the culture declares emergency in the UK, and there's a declination also of the music declares emergency. And right now, because I think next year is the European Year of Railway, so they are advocating for a railway discount card for musicians. So this will be a way also to travel by train, and it would maybe not be as expensive as it can be now compared to plane. I hope it wasn't too dense. It's a bit.
No, I think it's fine. Maybe the others, if they have some question, they can ask or some comment. No. Anyway, you spoke also about the need of some organizations which can help with this agenda. Sometimes it's really difficult for particular theaters or theater companies or dance companies to find someone with whom they might consult their strategies or ideas towards sustainability. And you spoke also about public incentives. Do we have some examples of good practices where these public incentives might help organizations in their direction towards more sustainable acting?
Yes, there are a few, but it's still an exception. In France, it's the case for the city of Rennes, who has that all public funding for the arts and culture are submitted to an environmental criteria. So in order to receive this funding, you have to fill a small report and show that you are doing something in this direction. And on a national level, it's only the case for one public institution, which is the National Center for Music. And they have also such criteria for their fund. And they also finance environmental projects for national networks. But so far, I think they just financed a guide called Drastic on Plastic to eliminate single-use plastic at music festivals. Maybe I can mention also, because we are still expecting more information on that, but we have the current recovery plan in France, which includes 2 billion euros for culture. And in this envelope, there is 206 million euros for subsidized performing arts, in which you can find also 20 million euros for the so-called ecological transition of the buildings of those institutions. This is something, of course, so we take whatever we can, but there's absolutely no mention of production or distribution activities in this plan. And yeah, so we're still waiting for more information, but it looks like it's going to go into building renovation, but not for all activities. And in this matter, UK is again a great source of inspiration, especially with the work of Julie's Bicycle. For those who don't know, it's a London-based charity that supports the creative community to act on climate change and environmental sustainability. And through their work with the Arts Council, they also support the organizations that receive public funding. and they have reports. I can show you some examples here. These are also the ones that have at the end they have like some kind of award ceremony, and they give those little stars that you can see at the left, and then they highlight some of the measures that are, and it's very, when you look at it, it's very, very impressive. But Julie's Bicycle has been working on this for already, I think, 15 years, and they're doing an amazing job with all those organizations. So it's a good example for other countries, I think.
Yeah, actually, we used their guidelines for sustainable behaviors in performing arts also for our questionnaires. It was a good model what to ask and which areas to highlight where organizations can act with more respect to environment.
Yeah.
Let's get back also to the current situation and to the COVID-19 pandemics, which moved many artistic activities to online platforms. I think that the very emergent topic related to sustainability is the digital pollution. Could you comment a little bit on that? Because I think that there are still many people who are not aware of that, if they don't organize a live event and they move their activities to online platforms, they also leave some carbon footprint with that activities.
Yes, this is something that I started to work on even before COVID, actually. In the music field, looking at the environmental impact of the music industry, and especially on streaming. And it's true that the common idea is, since its impact is almost invisible, the common idea is, oh, we cut on plastic because we don't produce as many CDs or vinyls or tapes, so this must be a good thing. And when I can share it with you, this it comes from a study from MIT and a book that came out on the ecological impact of music recently, and it shows that actually the impact, the environmental impact, has way more. I mean, it has increased tremendously, and the predictions are also showing that it's going to go way worse in the coming years. So it's not to say, of course, there are really positive aspects of going online, even for environmental measures, but the idea is more to think more maybe responsibly on the approach that we have to our consumption and to the way we use this, and also to compare maybe to give you some numbers. This is a study that is being done right now in France, so it's just the first funding, but it's a think tank called the Shift Project, which is looking at the decarbonization of the economy in France through all the sectors, and they look at the cultural sector and especially at the digital impact. And so you can see that probably a virtual reality live stream experience of 2 hours will require more data than I can even. For me, those numbers are just gigantic and don't mean much. But what's interesting is to see that the estimate shows that this viewing is way higher than the carbon cost per person of a show at a theater in the city center. So quite often people will think that if we have something online, it will be better because people won't have to move to the place. So you don't need the energy, but altogether it's not always true. And I've shared also some other numbers if you want to look at more comparison with what it means in terms of impacts.
Yeah, thank you very much for this example. It's absolutely shocking, I think, because when you see these numbers, it's really very surprising, especially in our situation right now.
Yes, and I think more and more studies will come in the coming months, but yeah, it's something we have to look into for sure.
Thank you very much, Gwen, for these facts and figures, which are also very important to understand what is the impact of our activities. We will now ask Anna about the situation in Poland. Anna, you represent a city organization, Biennial Warsaw. It's an interdisciplinary culture organization with not only artistic but also social activities. What's your commitment towards sustainability? Are there some strategies in your organizations, or is it just kind of random activity of individuals collaborating with the organization?
I will say that both. But maybe I will start with a really short and brief explanation about the idea of the biennial of Biennale Warszawa, because we are not a typical theater or performing art institution. Actually, from the formal point of view, we used to be a theater. It was a theater, also a city theater that was founded in the 70s. And to make it briefly, in 2015, it lost its venue. It was a repertory theater, but without a stable ensemble. And for some time, the city didn't know exactly what to do with it. And in 2017, appeared an idea to transform this theater into a kind of experiment and interdisciplinary hub, the institution that's going to cover different fields. And there was a competition, and our director, and with support of the different curators, won this competition. And we started we started with our program, let's say, from the beginning of 2018. And what is important is that we are trying to combine research projects with art and culture and activism. So these are actually the fields of our interest. And we are developing a permanent program and a kind of festival, which is a summary of the topics that we are interested in. We are very much curated program and a program that's got like these different lines. Our mission is to initiate and inspire public debate. And of course, this topics related to environment, because of that, are an important part of our artistic research and activistic activities. I think that I will not say anything strange, and I absolutely see that we are in a very similar moment with Czech Republic. There is no strategic way of thinking about sustainability, and I would say that it's much more based on grassroots initiatives, ideas of people, and ideas of some institutions. But it's really, it can be just like spots, I would say, on the map, than more than something like a really strategic idea. And I also think that in the sector of performing arts, especially, there's still a lot to do. Of course, according to the institution itself and its functioning, of course we print everything on recycled papers, but I think that it's a kind of trendy thing right now in culture to do so. So. It's just one of these ideas that I think that the most of the institutions right now are following. things like segregation of garbage, and for example, we don't use plastic bottles or plastic cups, and we serve everything with tap water. So these are like, I think, the basis for the, let's say, conscious team. I will call it like that. But on the other hand, I would like to raise here also the issue of obstacle in or within the public institution, which is like a huge bureaucracy. So even if you don't use the plastic cups, the number of printing documents in the digital area, it's extreme huge. So I think that this is also like a challenge for the public sector, and maybe not only for the public sector, because I think that most of the NGOs are also dealing with it. It's something that needs to be changed as well. And in frame of the biennial program, we call it this thematic line, politics of nature, and it's one of those that it's also like quite important within our activities. And I will just mention through few initiatives which I think that are interesting examples and are also describing some kind of our attitude in terms of these changes related to the pandemic and the coronavirus. So first of all, when the pandemic started, we had to redesign our program, and it was like really fast reaction. Maybe we could do it because we are a very small team. I will mention this as well. So many decisions are or can be really fast. We decided basically to freeze our performative projects, mostly because of the sanitary regime and our possibilities. I will just mention that we are not an institution with the typical theater venue. I mean, we have the venue, which was the former antique shop, and it's quite big, but it is adapted to different kind of activities that we are organizing: discursive program, performative, visual exhibitions, etc. And of course, this freezing of the performing arts, it's still going on, because actually, according to the sanitary regime and the number of people that could be present on that, it's not, this economic efficiency, it's somehow it doesn't work in terms of presenting these shows, and we do not have the stable ensemble. So on one hand it's an advantage, but on the other hand, of course, you have to hire people on the project basis. And during the whole spring we had been working mostly online. And where the lockdown for galleries and museums became less tight, we could open an exhibition. At that time, we had in our program an exhibition, Race and Forest, but at the same time, we also prepared an online version for it. And actually right now from September, we are trying to test the mixed on-offline discursive program. So we are preparing events with around 20 attendees in the venue, but we also live stream it, and it's possible to attend online. And second thing was that we made very fast and important decision, I think, according to the program, that we decided to transfer a part of our budget and organize an emergency online residency under the title COVID-19: The World After the Pandemic, and it has a name. As a kind of social program, an idea and a strong idea that was standing behind it to help actually the sector, the cultural sector, because many people, because of the precarity situation, were just without any money. So we decided to use some part of money. We did an open call. We chose 15 people, artists, activists, researchers. And what is important that we didn't expect from them to produce any particular work, which I think that is important because many state and local program that was supposed to support people were actually a typical grant program. So the organizers were expecting that artists gonna right now in the pandemic, produce a work. We rather asked them to contribute to the discussion on alternative economic, ecological, social, and cultural models that can be introduced after the pandemic. Another important initiative was to transform an exhibition into the web doc, an online documentary that it's possible to, it's called Burning Sun, and it's online. We open it on September, and actually the topic is exactly about that. It's about energy transformation and energy impact on daily practices and shaping our economies and culture. It's available also in English. It's burningsun.com, so you can check it. And if you have around 45 minutes free, it's really worth to listen it. But I will also mention that on the level of projects and institution, this project was also designed as a sustainable website. So for example, the colors that we are using are also the colors that are generating less carbon footprint than normal ones or the usual ones. So I think that this is again about this digital footprint that the websites and the online activities are leaving. And at the end, I will just mention that we also published some text about some series of theoretical text that we ask different philosophers, experts, sociologists, like philosopher Marina Garces or Polish sociologist Jan Sowa, about the COVID and the world after the pandemic. So they are proposing also some ideas about that. We organized a webinar with a kind of small publication, a kind of manual how to talk about the climate and pandemic crisis. So we are trying to include this topic, and it's somehow important, but I think that with our program lines and our activities, it's much easier than for the theaters and performing arts scene in general. So I will just and after reading your survey about the Czech situation, I don't have any data from Poland to compare this survey, but I think that our situation is really similar.
That's exactly what I wanted to ask you, because what you described is very organic combination of adaptation strategy to the current COVID situation and sustainable approaches to cultural activities. Actually, it's not possible to divide one off from the others in your activities as you describe your program. I think there were really nice examples also as an inspiration for other organizations or theaters, and especially I would like to remain that we are organizing this webinar also in frame of the theater night in the Czech Republic, a huge, massive live event, a celebration of theater, which is visited by hundreds and thousands spectators. And of course, we are also looking forward to this edition, which surely will be very different from the previous editions, and many activities of theaters will have to be probably moved online. So for example, sustainable website is really a great example, which could be taken from this talk. But I still have the feeling that you will be an exception in Poland. Am I right? Because I can't imagine that really the majority of theaters or dance companies would have such a range of activities.
Yeah, of course. I think that it's, you know, this rising awareness, I think that it's something important, and it's like a conscious work. It's something that it's not going to be done like really fast. However, I agree that there are several also good examples. I think that even for performing arts, it will be really interesting to inspire maybe more from visual arts, because I think that this is the sector which is where this consciousness and this awareness is much higher. I actually like researching some ideas and initiatives. I also found out a kind of group it's informal group. It's called Museums for Climate. And it's an initiative of different curators and different people working in the Warsaw and Polish museums. And what is really interesting is that one of their ideas is to organize a kind of green eco groups, let's say, in frame of the institutions, because museums are often big organizations. So this is a kind of, for me, a grassroots initiative. That maybe it could be an inspiring idea for the performing arts, like to really organize ourselves and just to make these changes from the bottom up.
Well, we called this talk Green Deal for Performing Arts, and funny enough, the real Green Deal, which is a guideline for the European Commission defining the priority of the climate neutral economy by 2050, was approved on 11 December last year. And funny enough, the only member state which hasn't approved this deal was Poland. But I guess that still the opinion on need to head to neutral economy in the field of performing arts will be different than the official government's position. Although I understand that this is very complex topic, and we don't want to tackle now all these industrial and energetic parts of the problem. But let's stay on the European level. You were, Anna, also in recent years the president of On the Move network, which is a network promoting cultural mobility. What is your experience, and what is your knowledge of current tendencies in mobility or in European policies supporting cultural sector and the green topics and priorities?
Yeah, I will just start with this Polish complex political context. Yeah, of course, this situation is quite complex, because we have very strong miners' trade unions in Poland, and it's somehow this tension between the carbon industry and the mining industry in Poland and our government, that right now this current government is supporting them, even if there are some tensions, because I think that even the miners are realizing that this change is just coming. So at some point I'm also a bit optimistic, you know, on the long term, that the social change is also in Poland going on faster than the political one, I would say. But of course, going into the On the Move and European perspective, environmental issues are actually the topic for, or were the topic for, or have has been the topic for On the Move from 2011, so it's really like for a long time. And when I even realized that, and thinking about the Polish or even the Central Eastern situation, it's really a huge difference. And from that time, actually, On the Move is constantly working with Julie's Bicycle as one of the important and the key player, I would say, in this sustainable development. And in 2011, we prepared together a green mobility guide for a performing arts sector. So again, like thinking about the book of Michaela, or it's nearly, it's 9 years, yeah, so really long time. And actually from this 2011, On the Move was involved in many European projects related to environment and climate change. I will just mention few, because from most of them there are some publications online, available online. So Gala Green Art Lab Alliance, that was founded by the EU from 2013 to 15. And in frame of this project, there was a Gala funding guide published with opportunities related with environmental projects. Then during the COP21 and the associated event Art COP21 in Paris, On the Move was organizing a workshop. Then we were a part of Creative Climate Leadership project coordinated by Julie's Bicycle. Right now, from 2019 till next year, On the Move is a part of Erasmus Plus Shift project, which is also related to climate change and environmental sustainability for cultural leadership. So there are many initiatives, and this is one of the hot topics for On the Move for really many years. But on the European level, many initiatives popped up just recently. So because of the COVID, because of the pandemic, the lockdown, and this current situation. And pandemic carried differently new and another meaning to this topic, also of digitalization, of sustainable environmental development. And this current context actually was giving the acceleration to the sector and to European players, but I'm still not sure. And actually, I was discussing it or just commenting with the Secretariat of On the Move, which is already on European level a very conscious strategy, or if it's still a kind of testing these ideas. Some recent things that were happening is that in February, European Cultural Foundation prepared with On the Move a document that was sent to Cultural Committee at the European Parliament with some examples and references of green initiatives, with a kind of strong question of greening the EU programs like Erasmus Plus or Creative Europe. Also, one of the call for tenders that were published by EU in mid-June already had this issue of sustainability written in it. And just to quote it, it was exactly written: to mitigate its carbon footprint, the scheme of this tender should encourage networking among hosting festivals and performing venues in a given geographical area for optimized, ideally continuous, touring plans with subsequent performances instead of several distinct return trips. Over other environmental issues linked to transportation or reuse of scenography, etc., should also be considered. So somehow it appears in this different tenders, calls, etc. I think we will see if it's already a kind of one bigger strategy, or if it's just a starting point for these changes. But I will mention here at the end just few things which are, because I think it's important to after all this that Gwen was talking about, to really find this balance. Because on one hand, we have different mobility grants, like for example, Step Beyond, that is promoting a lot train traveling. But on the other hand, we have, and even talking about Europe only, we have a big imbalance of railway infrastructure. So how to deal with it, you know, to not produce again borders, environmental, economic, you know, it's really a question mark, like how to deal with it. Another thing, internet connection. You know, the lockdown show up, at least in Poland, also the weaknesses of virtual space. So like experience of education, for example, it was also, you know, like showing up that it's still a problem with connection within some areas. Also the carbon footprint, you know, it's another point. And just the last thing to ask or to give this question, final question mark, it's of course the Article 16 of UNESCO Convention about diversity of cultural expression. So how to deal with it and how to find this balance according to international festivals, to its program, to, you know, like promote this diversity, but on the other hand, stay with the locality and sustainability. I think that, of course, our sector feels that we need a radical change, but how to make this radical change at the same time find the balance between it.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for your truly Central European perspective. It was an important topic you mentioned also. These, like, let's say, regional differences, which should be also taken into consideration when creating programs for support and financing culture. We will now give the floor to the last speaker of today's talk, which is Peter. You are, Peter, working a lot with independent artists in your curatorial work. Maybe we can start with a very simple question. If all these talks about sustainability as an academic research and as a strategic approach, or as some priorities even on the European level, are these topics really relevant for particular independent artists right now? Because I can imagine that they are really fighting somehow to survive and to sustain their basic life, not that much their cultural activities. What is the mood in the community?
Yeah, but I think this is all very tackled, like the sustainability, as also Michaela said at the beginning. It's something how to really exist in the ecosystem, and sustainability is definitely a key aspect how to approach it. And well, the mood is I try not to be super depressive because it is somehow, even though there are like some sparks of light, but they are now vanishing a bit behind me. But yeah, at some point it is a bit depressive what I feel from the artists that I talk to and that I work with, and it's happening on many notions. There is lots of frustrations, and I think if you also like compare it like what was happening in March and what is happening in now, I think the mood is more or less the same, but the impulses that are behind this mood are somehow like differently polarized or coming from different sources. And I don't know, if we speak about frustration, maybe at the beginning we had the frustrations of not being able to do things, but now it's maybe the frustration coming from the politics that the change is somehow not really happening, that after 6 months it's basically more or less the same, and we are still trying to organize ourselves in the same patterns and still kind of having on this mind like back to normal, even though there is like no back to normal at all, and there is rather a construction of new normativity And I think this is very connected to thinking of sustainability, of kind of redesigning the institutional practices. And it's also coming then back to individual actions. And yeah, so there is also lots of depression and but more like also like a disappointment. But I think it's very connected to at first a little bit this kind of the change is not really happening that fast as it has to, that we are still not that flexible as we should be. And there's also like, I think, a little bit of the lack of the vision of the change. But then it's also like, I think, connected to hope that it's somehow still here. And I think there's effort in many of us. And I'm super happy, for example, to hear the things that Anna was doing with her team in Biennale. I think those are these kind of messages that the art community really needs to see, that there are some changes and some kind of new opportunities that are, for example, not that production based, that are kind of redefining the measurements of success, which I think is really a huge topic for all of us to think differently of art. And in our effort, like, I think what maybe is needed is like to go a little bit beyond art and don't and see it rather as a practice and not just as a product, and treat it like this. And yeah, but and maybe also like connected to the mood, I was chatting in the morning with my friend from Berlin, Pauline Payen. It's a choreographer, dancer, interpreter, and theater maker. And I was asking her how she, for example, perceives the situation. So it's not, so there's also like some kind of voice from also like people that we speak about. So so maybe I will just read it. It's a few words just to give the voice. Dear, I will be honest. I just spent insomnia because fee gigs got cancelled and project in Mexico might as well. Plus fact that there is always a risk that theater closes again and I can't travel home. So I get loss of income, refusal of grants and residency, cancelled projects. I believe it's happening to many like this. Sometimes you just have to swallow stones, and this is exactly how I feel with stones in my body. I can make up nice, hopeful sentences to relieve everyone with some wise words. Sometimes you just need to sit in your shit and wait for better times. I believe that the economical crisis coming will make our work all the more difficult in the next times, all the already fragile structures risking to collapse anytime. Let's see if politics will engage. The good part maybe is that I slowly managed to drift away from ideas of success. Any practice like Feldenkrais or softening the controlling and wanting mind has been helpful. Also talking with friends about possible ways of anarchist behavior inside neoliberalism and mutual emotional support were essential to keep of a belonging. I see how much potential and efforts there is around me, so many talented artists, so much desire to create and belong. But it is shaded by a lot of fear, perpetuated by a system that gives belief that there is not enough resources for all and we must compete. That creates a big despair and unbearable dynamics of love-hate relationships. It was already like this, but it's even more today, no matter how resistant people are. I see that maybe there is no need to fight. I find the system totally fucked up and unhealthy, and I'm sick of it. I want to find a different system. And I think especially the last sentence is something that we are talking about, like that, like really we need to dig down and create like new systems that are sustainable, that are like thinking of different distributing of resources and also like knowledges and so on. And maybe from my perspective, when I try also like to take some steps towards this, like what is now really like complicating in a lot. It's a tiredness. It's, I think, on many levels, like actually, like I think for me, and I think also for most of you, the pandemic's isolation actually brought even more work, and it's even more overloading on many layers. And now with the new restrictions, with the inconsistent government policies towards the norms, we need to restructuralize our activities. For many of us, it was maybe free transformations, like really going from scratch and do everything from the zero. So I think to really kind of restart, I need to calm down, to kind of really stop for a while to kind of refresh my mind, because otherwise it's still kind of being on the move, and I'm not sure if the change can actually happen if, for example, I really like move in this fast direction. Yeah.
Thank you, Peter, for the quote, because it reconnected us to Michaela's definition of arts as an endangered species. Actually, we are not talking here in our discussion only about sustainability, but also about sustaining performing arts due to the COVID pandemics. You also talked about frustration, hope, and lack of visions. And again, it reconnects us to the repeated urgent need to change thinking about what we do, and how do we impact the world around us. But maybe you have some visions. I suspect that as you are a participant in one European project, which is called Reshape, maybe you can share with us some insights in what visions can be created for the current situation. The project, of course, is not finished. There will be final conclusions and outputs presented next year. But the main aim of Reshape is to create innovative organizational models and reflect on concrete answers to crucial challenges related to the production, distribution, and presentation of contemporary art practices. And the aim of Reshape is to imagine an alternative to the European arts ecosystem by rethinking its instruments and collaborative models, placing them in line with artistic and social innovation and the principles of fairness, solidarity, geographic balance, and sustainability. So is there something you can share with us already now about the processes in this project and the discussions you are having there?
Yeah, I think I can connect parts of our research towards what we are talking and what I'm talking about, but also maybe just a little go back. Like as you mentioned, the thing that Michaela said, that the art is endangered species. I was a little bit disagreeing with it, because I think it's more that it's the structures that are now like endangered, and maybe it's also like to and maybe also like the art as we are used to perceive it, it's endangered, but maybe yeah, this needs to go also a little beyond, and it's not like a pure disagreement, but maybe just to kind of see that it can go a little further in this, and then maybe we won't be maybe that afraid or frustrated, because we might kind of go back to bottom and restructuralize or something. It's very hypothetical, but I just try always to take some detours and try. I think I'm really inspired by hackers recently, and yeah. But back to the Reshape. To make it clear, there are like 5 trajectories in the project, and I'm in the trajectory together with other 8 professionals from different fields, curators, dramaturgists, as well as researchers and social workers. We are working on the trajectory called trans and post-national art practices, which is basically dealing a lot with mobility. And this is also was a starting point for our research to kind of see where and what kind of dialogues are between the nomadic artists and kind of communities or spaces that they temporarily land to and inhabit, and like our research lead us that this is really creating lots of otherness and extravist approaches on both like human and other than human levels. And then we kind of realized that our maybe role is not really to go for some institutional changes, but kind of focus really on the ones that are in this liquid situations of being forced to be hypermobile, and to see how we can help and highlight the need of connections, and to emphasize like new ways of connectivity, how we relate to our environments, to our surroundings, to our practices, and also to our localities. So one of the kind of thing that we came with are some small rituals as kind of intimate practices that propose some actions that could help in order to get closer to whatever's around you. And I can share a few of them. There are just drafts, and but it basically looks like this. This ritual is about like watching an object in your surrounding and see how it can change in time. I will just go briefly through them, and if you are interested, I can send you these. These are the prototypes that you can test out. Many of them are connected to mobility, but okay, then I need to. Sorry. It's the problem with the viewer. I can share maybe one more. Okay, so yeah, this fun is, for example, whenever you are hosting someone or you are visiting at some place, that you are kind of creating a map of what is around. Where is the local grocery? Where is the local bakery? What are, for example, the small shops around, to see what are the local actors, and also try to approach them. For example, as in this variation for institution, it's to engage collaboration with what is really in your area, because we also think that sometimes it's such much easier to, for example, work internationally than to work really locally, and to be in really touch with someone who is around your corner, and then with someone who is 1,000 kilometers away, which is ridiculous and also at some point unsustainable. But this all kind of leads to one principle that I'm thinking a lot more and more, and also I think it's very connected to sustainability, and we are thinking a lot about compost as a really nice principle. And there is one nice sentence that we sum up, that by growing from your environment, the environment grows from you. And so it's basically about this kind of rooting, and to know your ground, and to put something to distribute, and then be able like also to take. So I think the compost will be something that will go with me for next years. So this is basically what we are now doing in the Reshape. We are also like expanding the research with tarot cards, which we are translating to the trans and post-national art practices and to our topic. And the tarot cards will be used as a tool for self-reflection, that they just propose some questions that you can apply to your practice. And this all will be hopefully ready in second part of October, which is our deadline, which is very sharp. And but release something in January or something. So watch the websites, I think. But there are also like the work of colleagues working on other like projects and innovations and shifts on things from shifted perspective. I think it's really amazing work that has been done in this 2-year course.
I found in one of your projects in the shared platform called Process Lab a text you displayed by Bruno Latour, which is called "What protective measures can you think of so we don't go back to the pre-crisis production model?" And I chose this part, which somehow illustrates also something what you mentioned already, which is this no back to normal anymore. Could you comment maybe a little bit on this? Where you found this text and what is it related to?
Basically, Bruno Latour wrote this text, I think somewhere in March, in late March, so at the very beginning of the crisis, and what he writes is super actual and went super to the point, and was kind of mapping the situation and seeing it as a challenge to really go for the new structures. But at the end, it's a very interesting text. It's very short and very understandable. It's not really this super difficult Bruno Latour. We say that it's a Bruno Latour before his morning coffee. But it's at the end he proposed like small questionnaire to be asked by the reader. And the first question is kind of obvious, like what of the stopped or these stopped activities you don't want to see coming back. But the second question comes saying something like, and what would you recommend to all these people who were, for example, losing jobs because of the stopped activities? So suddenly there is this shift towards like start to think out of your box and like kind of highlight the notion of care maybe, and I think it's definitely good to answer them, and they are very difficult questions. But he basically talks about paradigm shift, and it's being quoted a lot also by artists, and he's also like very close to artistic scene. He's doing exhibition and so on, I guess, you know. And for me, what it means, like that, also like connected to this project that you mentioned, this shared practices. It was also residency focused on, let's say, non-productivity. It was focused on developing own practice and kind of trying to identify it. And by it, I wanted to see, for example, how the artistic practice could be translated into something different than just sorry for this, for production of art, as I'm aware more than ever before that what is kind of really important for me in these days are, for example, the soft skills of artists, whether it's like a communication, really kind of developed intuition, being able to work with people, being able to improvise, and those are kind of skills that I think that are applicable not just in art field, but they are kind of crafted throughout making art, or and so basically this is something that comes on my mind, like how art practices could be translated into different formats, which would also maybe then lead to how to maybe be rooted, how to not be super dependent on production, and rather go into a different direction and take the detours. I hope this was a little bit, maybe it was a little bit chaotic, because it's still a little bit chaotic in my mind what to actually do with the practices. But basically it comes also like from sustainability, like that many of my friends are not able like to make their living as artists. So also like, okay, but how then your experience from art could be translated somewhere else? Maybe we don't need all like stay on stages. We definitely don't need. And I think this is also like a question to be maybe asked on many theaters and institutions how to go beyond just just presenting art. Like for me, it was one of the really very heartwarming moment at the beginning of the first lockdown. It's kind of a phenomenon. No, sorry. Was that many of the theaters in Prague like became like let's say factories for masks, sewing masks, and I guess it was also in other words. And I was suddenly thinking, wow, this is so great. Like they really kind of translated their practice and their resources, their networks, and also their resources, capacities to do something also for the local or for the global communities. And it was so amazing to see what they were suddenly able to do. And I'm a little bit disappointed maybe that it's when it was the restrictions were loosened a little bit, that they also become just production of art. And I'm sorry for saying just, but I just see that there should be like also like a step sides or start to kind of expand our activities, also maybe related with this kind of routing compose principles, and to not be just dependent on art as we perceive it in past years.
Yes, so I have the feeling that that's the conclusion of all your talks, that this return to normal before COVID is impossible, and try to make something from this experience. And Peter, don't be afraid. I think all of us, we are talking in a chaotic way because we are living in times of chaos. So it's just a normal human reaction to that. And that's actually why we are having this talk here, because as I said at the very beginning, we should collect here rather some observations in this whole process than some findings and conclusions, because we are still in the middle of it and it's not over, and it will take time to digest and to get through this change. We have last 7 minutes of our talk, and we have also one question from our spectators, and I think it's a perfect final questions for your remarks and conclusions from this talk. There are so many interesting ideas, but do you think there is a real possibility to apply them in real level, political and institutional? How, just grassroots? Is question for everyone. And here I think that's the main question. Who has responsibility to begin with the change? So I would ask each of us to give some short comment on this question. I don't know if there will be answers, but maybe some suggestions. Who would like to start?
I can start, but I will maybe not answer exactly the question. But for sure, the responsibility shouldn't be on the artist. What I see around me a lot, I can relate with a lot of what Pet was saying. There's a lot of eco-fatigue, there's a lot of mental health issues, and they are carrying a lot on their shoulders already. But what is true also is artists have this unique capacity to influence so many people around them. So it's a tricky one, but in terms of true responsibility, for me, it's really on the states to put really guidelines and to take drastic decisions, because we don't have the choice, actually. We're just going into the wall, so it's pretty much ignoring and doing business as usual, but it's taking us all into a very wrong direction, for sure.
I can follow.
Yes, yes.
I would say that the responsibility begins within ourselves, with each of us, and And it is one thing we also a lot of times see that like we try to, or groups try to put the responsibility on somebody else. Some initiatives try to put the responsibility on politicians, but or other institutions. But I think the true responsibility is within us. We need to start with ourselves. And so that's one thing. And the other question is that there is a real possibility to apply them in real level, political, institutional, how it is like we have, and Julie's bicycle was mentioned here so many times. It's amazing. And you know, it's a great example of how this can really work, because Julie's bicycle started as a initiative of two girls. It started in a living room, talking around the table, and look now, after 15 years of working, they are the world's most renowned organization to help and navigate in the area of sustainability and ecology in creative industries. They became consultant for lawmaking. They became really to-go organization for government, and it all began as a just around the table talk. So it is great example that great ideas, no matter how they started, just like talking with a wine in the hand, can go into implementing. It depends what you want to achieve and how much energy you put into it. And it is great that the ladies who started like persisted, and they also walked the talk. They were responsible for their doing, and they showed the examples, and they were doing the work, and others followed.
Thank you, Misha.
I would say
Anna?
that
Yeah.
I would say that these grassroots initiatives and our personal attitudes are very important, but I think that without real political change, it will be only partial. I think that the pandemic just lightened and show up much bigger problems, and especially thinking about Central Eastern Europe and our countries, where during this last 30 years after the communists fall down, the capitalism was entering, you know, so fast and so aggressively, and was changing also culture, because it was entering into the performing arts scene, into the financing of the culture sector. And I think that without pushing stakeholders, politicians, industry, corporations, of course, Fridays for Climate or this school strikes for climates were showing that it's impossible through such an activities to push politicians to initiate this topic in the public debate, to put it into the mainstream debate. And I think that these are an important changes that we can do as a grassroots initiatives or in our daily work, but without this political, and I would even say the global change, there won't be a real change. And just the last sentence that I will quote, this what Peter said, like to find another system, that we are exactly in this moment, which the really huge human shift is just coming. Thank you.
So Peter, the final word is yours.
No, this is too much pressure.
No,
But,
I will say something after.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, I'm coming from a really DIY scene. I was never operating with big budgets, so it's really kind of hard for me to really understand how all the sector works. And I'm super happy that there are many associations that I'm kind of making the policy, and they're like talking with the politics and making the agency, like also for like us who are on the top. But I think that it's also like super neat that we really focus also on inside and not really to push outside that much, and that we focus on our like smaller artistic and audience communities, and again like highlight the notions of care and solidarity within them, and that without it, I think without this kind of support that is super needed, and it's also, this is the thing that kind of lifts the mood up and make this all kind of bearable, then yeah, then it's not possible to sustain without these ways of being supportive for each other. And I'm super happy, again, like what Anna, for example, is doing with the Biennale, because I think this is really sending so many positive messages to the scene, which is kind of shaken by the politics, not only by the economical and existential crisis, but so yeah, I think we need more of these, and maybe we should ask the institutions who has the resources to give us these messages that there is some change happening.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this range of ideas, suggestions, thoughts, recommendations, inspirations. We are over our time limit. It's 2 minutes after 5 o'clock, so we have to end here. I would like to thank you very much for your input, for sharing your practices and your doubts and your frustrations and hopes with us today. I would like just to announce that we will continue these talks about where are we heading to with the focus on performing arts and the current practices in performing arts. This talk will be available on the YouTube channel of the Arts and Theatre Institute. And to complete also the question from our audience, there will be a written summary available along with the recording, which will mention also the examples which were used by our guests here, so that you can get back to some websites or texts or practices we were mentioning during our talk. So once more, thank you very much, and please stay with us and connect to part 2 of the Green Thursdays series. The next international online discussion with Czech and foreign guests from the field of performing arts will happen again on 4th Thursday in October. It means precisely on 22nd October. Again, we will start with at 3 p.m. And the topic of the second part of our series will be the third theater reform, and it will focus on the impact of digitization on performing arts. The moderator will be Ondřej Škrabal, and his guests, I'm happy that I can announce them already, are going to be Matěj Nitra, who is a dramaturg from the Czech theater Hadivadlo, Krzysztof Garbaczewski from Poland, Polish theater director, and Markus Lobes, director in Theater Dortmund and head of the Academy for Theater and Digitality in Dortmund. So I hope it will be also an inspiring talk. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your questions, and stay positive, stay healthy, and stay green.